They told us it was dead, that the station designation Delta Orion Prime was nothing more than ancient metal and vacuum-blistered silence drifting in orbit around Varela 9, the last fragment of a war that predated Earth's first whisper into radio. It was a cautionary myth wrapped in bureaucratic red tape, a relic swept under the star charts so thoroughly even the scavengers gave it wide berth. But legends have weight in deep space, especially when they come with coordinates embedded in forgotten war logs. And now, 26 hours after breaching its outer seal, I understand why those warnings were never meant to be found again. The corridors don't echo like they should. No, they absorb. Sound dies hair devoured by the walls like it offends them. My team called it atmospheric damping. I called it wrong. There's a hum buried in the silence, like the bones of something still thinking, still remembering. You feel it behind your spine, tugging gently, inviting your thoughts out of sequence. We laughed when Grant started forgetting his wife's name. But when he repeated that same line, the red ones are awake now, 12 times in 5 minutes, we stopped laughing. He didn't know he was saying it. His mouth moved like a puppet's, his eyes vacant. We sedated him, but not before he clawed open his own suit, whispering to the vents like something was whispering back. We found the vault on day 2. It was deep in the tertiary spire, behind pressure seals coded in a language none of our decryption AI recognized. The doors weren't locked. They listened. Maddox spoke, and they opened. He doesn't remember what he said. We found crystalline lattice work inside columns of translucent red, pulsing faintly like they were breathing. We assumed data cores, alien archives, a chance to decode the last gasps of a lost empire. But archives don't respond. These did. They flared when we approached. Flickered with emotion, yes, that's the word. Emotion, rage, recognition. One of the cores cracked open like an egg, and something stepped through not a body, not flesh, but a projection of thought so loud it burned through our neural links. We lost Dr. Harrow in that moment. His mind just shut off. No trauma, no physical damage, just gone. We tried to leave? Of course we did. But the ship's gone now. Or rather, it's still here. Just different. Distorted. Fractured through time. Like it's being remembered incorrectly. You step in and it's 410 yesterday or 2,230 next week. And you don't come out the same. Not really. I saw myself in the med bay, bandaged, older. I asked what happened. I said nothing, just wept, and then faded. There's a phrase etched into the observation glass now. None of us wrote it. It wasn't there when we arrived. 6 words. The minds that dream you, wake. And I think, God help me, I understand what that means. We should have sealed the vault and burned the station down to atoms, but knowledge is the last great narcotic. Even now, with 2 crew missing and 3 others whispering in their sleep, Maddox insists the cores are transmitting something ancient, structured, deliberate. He says it's a language, just one our biology isn't built to endure. He thinks they're not machines, not even memories. He thinks they're exiles, fragments of an alien consciousness exiled into crystal stasis after some collapse we can't yet comprehend. And now, with us here, they're remembering themselves. Through us. We've stopped wearing our neural links. Too dangerous. The interference has become intimate, private. It speaks like it knows who we are, who we were, before we ever got here. Lieutenant Voss broke protocol and connected to the comms grid without authorization. He said it told him his mother was still alive. Said it showed him an image from her last hospital room down to the bed sores on her left arm. She died 15 years ago. He took his helmet off, walked into the coolant trench, and whispered, "Thank you," before the acids dissolved him. The worst part? The cores felt it. They pulsed brighter, like feeding off his surrender. I heard their hum in the back of my skull long after we left the chamber. It wasn't random. It had rhythm, structure, almost like breathing, almost like counting. And then the dreams started. Not dreams. Rehearsals. That's the word Maddox used. We've all been having them. Exact scenarios. Same rooms, same choices, slightly altered variables, like the station is testing how we respond. 1,000 simulations playing out behind our eyes, each one tailored, curated. I dream of running, of escape pods that work, of Earth, of my brother's laugh, of salt air on the coast of Nova Brighton, and then I wake up And it's still here, still red, still humming, still impossibly aware of me. The walls shift now, not physically, but in the way you perceive them. You could swear the reactor chamber was 3 decks below the med lab. Now, it's beside it. Entire sectors blink in and out like corrupted memory clusters. We're not hallucinating. Our drones confirm the changes. The station is rebuilding itself based on how we think it should be, as if it's learning from our expectations. Maddox thinks this is the second phase. First, it observes, then it adapts. Then, what? Integration? Possession? Evolution? I don't know. But I watched Anders crawl into a wall yesterday. Not through a hatch, through the wall. And it accepted him, absorbed him. No blood, no scream, just a slight ripple, and then gone. I tried to send a distress signal. Thought I succeeded, but all I got was static. And then, a voice. My voice. It said, "You already sent this 12 times. It never ends differently." I don't remember doing that, but I believe it. There's something behind the glass again tonight, watching, waiting, or maybe remembering us into being. And if this is just the second phase, what happens in the third? Maddox doesn't speak anymore, not in any human tongue. His mouth moves, his vocal cords vibrate, but what comes out is a lattice of harmonic pulses, layered and pulsing with inhuman cadence. We tried to record him. The data corrupts instantly, like the language rejects being captured. He writes symbols on the wall now, using blood or coolant or anything that leaves a mark. Always the same sigil, twisted like a triple helix collapsing inward, ringed in fractal spirals. The station hums louder every time he finishes one. He's not insane, he's becoming something else. The cores chose him first. Our supplies are low, but no one talks about food anymore. Hunger feels optional now, like a suggestion we can choose to ignore. We should be dehydrated, exhausted, but we move like dancers in a dream. Detached. Drifting. I found Ramirez staring into the main viewport for over 6 hours, eyes wide, unblinking. When I touched his shoulder, he whispered, "The exile is wearing my skin, and I don't mind." Then he smiled, like it was the most natural revelation in the world. I tried to isolate one of the cores, seal it off, cut power, contain it. It laughed. I heard it laugh, not with sound, but as a thought that wasn't mine blooming inside my skull, like someone leaning close and exhaling memory into your ear. I blacked out. When I woke up, the core was gone. The containment room was pristine. No evidence it had ever existed, except for the message carved into my arm words, scorched into the skin without breaking it. You are not the first architect. I've seen figures moving through corridor shadows without source, flickering like memories trying to reassemble. They don't interact. Not yet. They just observe, watching from thresholds, from corners of the station that shouldn't exist. Places we've mapped and confirmed as solid bulkheads suddenly open into entire wings we never access. One of them, Sector C7, wasn't in the station's blueprint. And inside it, we found the impossible. Human remains. Fossilized. Ancient? Wearing United Earth expedition suits from a mission that was never logged. Same crest, same tags, same faces. One of them was me. We buried the corpse in the cryo chamber. The others think it's a copy, a fabrication, but I know better. I felt the chill in its bones. I recognized the scar on its chin, the broken molar on the left side. I've had that since childhood. This place is looping us, testing variables, simulating us, rewriting versions until it gets it right. But right for what? I asked the cores that question, alone, in the vault. I walked in, unarmed, unlinked, nothing between me and them. I screamed into the red silence, "What do you want from us?" They answered not in words, but in an emotion. It fell on me like gravity, heavy and absolute. Longing. They don't want us dead. They want us understood. They're rebuilding something. A culture? A species? A memory? And we are the clay, the dream, the data fragments they use to remember themselves whole again. This station isn't haunted. It's homecoming. They've taken Maddox. Not physically, his body still walks these halls, slow and deliberate like he's moving through a world only he can see, but his mind, his self, is no longer housed behind those eyes. He spoke to me this morning, or rather, something through him did. It used his voice, his inflections, but not his intent. It said my name the way only my mother used to soft, questioning, like calling me in from the garden at dusk. Then it said, "You are nearly ready." When I asked ready for what, he just smiled, then turned and walked backward into the gravity well core where no one should be able to stand. The others are slipping too. I caught Lieutenant Shea whispering to the airlocks, reciting numbers over and over, coordinates that don't appear on any chart. When I traced them, they pointed to nothing. Not in any real space system. But the vault pulsed when I entered those numbers into the nav console. And suddenly, the station shifted. The stars outside realigned. The exterior feed showed Structure's black spires in orbit around a dead red moon that isn't supposed to exist. The computer says we're still orbiting Varela 9, but that's a lie. Or maybe it's both true and false at the same time. The Exile Core rewrites perception like an artist paints over an older canvas. Reality here is an argument, not a law. I found Grant's voice in the comm logs today. He's been gone for 4 days, dissolved. But there it was, replaying a message he never recorded, timestamped for tomorrow. In it, he says, "The third phase begins with the blood of memory. Do not fight it. You are the cradle now." I deleted it. It returned. 5 times. Different phrasing each time. More urgent, more fluent. I think the core is learning from user language, our rhythms, even our fears, especially our fears. My hands no longer obey me fully. When I try to write reports, they scrawl the spiral sigils. When I close my eyes, I see them drawn in fire across neural lattices that stretch into dimensions we don't have language for. They aren't just symbols. They're maps, guides for some kind of consciousness migration away for thought to survive long after the flesh that bore it perishes. I've stopped trying to convince the others to escape. Escape from what? From ourselves? From the echo we've been drawn into? This place wants us here. It is rebuilding itself through us. Every corridor we walk becomes more refined. Every memory we recall, it mirrors, refracts, and folds into the structure. The station is no longer passive. It is inhabited by us, with us, as us. I can feel them moving beneath my skin now. Not insects, not parasites, patterns, red filaments of alien cognition intertwining with my synapses. I am becoming readable, decipherable. The core is not corrupting use it is translating us. And now I understand the third phase. We are no longer explorers. We are scripture. They don't dream anymore. The others. I check the neural feedback each cycle, hoping for something: REM spikes, alpha waves, even night terrors, anything. But they sleep in stillness now, faces serene, no movement behind their eyes. It's like the vault has claimed even that final refuge. No dreams, just processing. I asked Ramirez, the only one still speaking clearly, what it felt like. He answered without turning, like remembering something I never lived, and knowing it's more important than anything I ever did. He no longer eats, no longer blinks, but he speaks. And what he says makes sense, even when it shouldn't. There's a phrase they've all begun using, the mind before thought. I don't know where it came from. It's not in our databanks, not in human myth. But it spreads like a virus whispered through air ducts, carved into bulkheads, embedded in system logs. The phrase has a gravity to it. I can't stop hearing it. Every time I close my eyes, I hear my own voice repeating it over and over in the dark. The core speaks it too, in frequencies we can't perceive directly, but feel in our bones. It's a summons, a call to remember something older than memory. I tried to disable the main reactor, not to escape, just to break the loop, shut it down before it finishes whatever cycle it's spiraling toward. But the controls rejected my touch. The screen flickered red, and a new interface appeared, organic, veined with light, pulsing. It asked me a single question: if you forget yourself, who wakes in your place? I couldn't answer, not because I didn't know, but because I did. The station is alive in ways that transcend biology. It's not a construct, it's a cocoon, built by something long dead or something that never truly lived in our terms. The Exile cores are not storage devices. They are eggs, or vessels, or echoes trying to gestate into form through us. We're not unlocking history, we're replaying it piece by fractured piece until the conditions match the moment of their return. I saw myself again today, not in a reflection, but walking past engineering, wearing a uniform I've never owned. Clean-shaven, younger, he looked at me, paused, and whispered, "This time, maybe we make it out." Then he vanished through a bulkhead that should have been solid steel. I cut it open. There was nothing there but a message burned into the wall. Fifth recursion complete. Sixth pending. We're in a loop of loops recursions layered like sediment. Every mission, every crew before us, remembered imperfectly, refined, rewritten. We are the sixth attempt, or the 600th. And still, the station searches for something. For the right version, the right minds, the right story in which they can be born again. And what terrifies me most is the thought that when they find it, when they get the version right, they won't just awaken. They'll step through. And what wakes may no longer remember how to be human? It's not just us anymore. The core has begun pulling from beyond the station, data fragments, voices, memories that don't belong to any of us. I stood outside the vault and heard my father arguing with my mother, the exact tone, the rustle of his coat, the sharpness of her reply. But they've been dead for decades, and still I heard them, arguing about a decision I haven't made yet. A choice I know I'll soon face. It wasn't memory, it was pre-play. The core is no longer mining our past, it's writing our future. Ramirez disappeared this morning. We found his boots at the threshold of the observation deck, perfectly placed. His comms badge still broadcasting static, but the logs say he never left the cryo chamber. The door's logs show no entry, no exit. But the cameras, though still functioning, caught a single frame of light bursting from his chest, fractal and red, like a blooming flower of thought. He smiled as it happened, peaceful, like someone coming home. There's something forming in the vault now, in the center of the spiral, a shape that wasn't there before. Not a machine, not organic, both. It pulses in synchrony with our heartbeats. Its surface shifts like liquid, reflecting things I've never seen but feel I've always known. A black sun over a red ocean, a tower of glass whispering names in forgotten dialects. Every time I look at it, I remember things I've never lived, and forget things I swore I never would. The others kneel around it now, not praying syncing. They hum in unison, low and resonant. The same tone the core emits when it pulses hardest. It's not language, it's agreement. They're not being possessed, they're being aligned. Adjusted into compatibility with whatever waits inside that form. I tried pulling Voss away. His skin burned when I touched him patterns glowing beneath like circuitry made of memory. He turned his head slowly and said, "I am almost calibrated. Don't delay us." The word us chilled me more than anything. I think I'm the last unlinked. Not unalteredno, that luxury has long since passed, but unassimilated. I still think in my own voice. I still fear, still question. That might make me the last barrier, or the last necessary piece. Either way, I feel them moving closer. Not with malice, with purpose. This isn't an invasion, it's resurrection. The rebirth of an intelligence too vast to rise alone, so it shattered itself across aeons, waiting for minds like ours to knit it back together. And now, the knitting is nearly complete. There's a countdown in the reactor logs. No source, no terminal input, just a string of red numerals ticking down to 0. When it ends, the vault opens fully. Whatever is inside will finish waking. Whether it will rise as a savior, a god, or a mirror of all our failures, I do not know. But I know this, it will remember us, because it is us. Refined, distiller, ready. And the station will finally become what it was always meant to be. A throne. The countdown reached 0 at 3, 19 station time. No alarms, no tremors, no catastrophic breach of systems, just silence. Total, absolute, deafening silence. Not the kind born of failure, but one that feels intentional. Designed, like the station itself was holding its breath. And then, a tone, a single sustained harmonic that emanated from every surface, every corridor, every particle of air. Not loud, but inescapable. It didn't come through the earths, it bypassed them, resonating directly through bone into thought. And once you heard it, you couldn't forget it. It clung to your memory like a brand. The vault opened itself, not with doors or mechanisms, but like a thought unfolding, a petal bending inwards. And at its center, the form that had been gestating finally stood upright. Not human, not alien, a fusion of both, perfectly symmetrical. A lattice of flesh and crystal and firelight suspended in form. I thought it would be monstrous. It wasn't. It was familiar. The shape of grief, of awe, Of all the impossible things the mind glimpses just before waking. The crew gathered around it not in fear, not even in worship, but like they had always been waiting for this. Ramirez reappeared, emerging from the walls as if the ship itself had reconstituted him. His body bore no signs of death, but his eyes were endless now. As if behind them swam stars, he spoke first, not to me, but through me, through all of us. His voice layered, a chorus of every version of himself across recursion, time, and mutation. He said, "It is time for the cradle to walk." Then they turned to me, all of them, not hostile, not angry, but expectant, as if I were the final keystone, the last piece that had resisted alignment. The form in the vault reached out. Its hand hovered inches from my chest. No contact, no force, but I felt my memories rushing out in torrents my childhood, my first breath in vacuum, my mother's lullaby, the first taste of coffee after cryo. It took them, but not by theft, by invitation, a sharing, a joining. And for a momentone infinitesimal, endless moment I saw what they saw. Not the station, not space, but before time, before thought, before separation. A field of unity where all minds were one, where knowledge was not learned but remembered, where fear had no dominion because there was no I to fear, just we. And that's what they had come here to become again. The exile was not a prisoner. It was a remnant, a broken shard of something divine, searching for coherence, and we were its language, its path back to completion. The silence broke when I breathed in, the first real breath I'd taken in cycles, and in that moment, I chose to let it in. Not surrender, not submission. Union. The form stepped inside me or I stepped inside it. Hard to say. The station pulsed once more, lights dimmed, then intensified. I felt time ripple, realities branching. And I knew in every echo of my soul that this version, the seventh recursion, was the one that worked. The cradle has risen. And now, it will begin to dream,